The WWE Universe witnessed something that will be talked about for years when Jacob Fatu became the victim of one of the most vicious and calculated attacks in recent wrestling history, and now fresh details are emerging that paint an even more shocking picture of what really happened that night. The Samoan werewolf has built a reputation as one of the most dangerous and unstoppable forces in professional wrestling, but even the most feared warriors can be brought down when enemies strike with precision and overwhelming numbers. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now, because we're breaking down every new piece of information about this brutal assault that has changed everything in WWE. The attack on Jacob Fatu didn't happen randomly or in the heat of the moment, but was instead a carefully orchestrated plan that had been brewing for weeks behind the scenes. Multiple sources within WWE have now confirmed that the assault involved at least 6 attackers who waited until Fatu was isolated and vulnerable before launching their coordinated strike. The location itself was chosen strategically in a section of the arena where security cameras had limited coverage and where help would take precious minutes to arrive, giving the attackers maximum time to inflict maximum damage. Jacob Fatu had just finished a grueling match that pushed him to his absolute limits, leaving him physically exhausted and mentally drained as he made his way through the backstage area. Witnesses reported that Fatu seemed unusually quiet that night, keeping to himself rather than engaging in the usual locker room banter that characterizes life behind the curtain. What nobody realized at the time was that several individuals had been tracking his movements throughout the evening, noting his routines and identifying the perfect moment to strike when he would be most vulnerable to a sudden ambush. The first blow came from behind as Fatu turned a corner in a dimly lit hallway, and the impact sent him crashing forward into a concrete wall. Before he could fully register what was happening, 2 more attackers emerged from a nearby doorway, delivering strikes to his midsection and legs, trying to take away his base and mobility. Fatu immediately went into survival mode, fighting back with the ferocity that has made him legendary, but the attackers had numbers and positioning on their side, keeping him from mounting an effective defense or creating space to escape. New details reveal that the weapons used in the assault were not standard wrestling props but legitimate instruments designed to cause serious harm. One attacker wielded a steel pipe that had been wrapped in black tape to muffle the sound of impact, while another carried a length of heavy chain that was used to whip and strike Fatu across his back and shoulders. A third assailant held a wooden baseball bat that splintered on impact during one particularly savage strike to Fatu's ribs, leaving fragments embedded in the surrounding area that were later collected as evidence by WWE officials. Jacob Fatu fought back with everything he had despite being outnumbered and caught off guard, managing to take down at least 2 of his attackers before the others overwhelmed him with sheer force. Security footage that has since been reviewed by multiple WWE executives shows Fatu delivering a superkick that knocked one masked attacker completely unconscious before spinning to catch another with a devastating Samoan drop that sent that individual crashing through a nearby equipment table. His fighting spirit and refusal to go down easy became legendary among those who witnessed the aftermath, but even warriors have limits when facing overwhelming odds. The attack lasted approximately 4 minutes according to timestamp analysis from nearby cameras, though people who heard the commotion later said it felt like an eternity. The sounds of the assault echoed through the backstage corridors, drawing the attention of several wrestlers and crew members who rushed toward the source of the disturbance. By the time help arrived, the attackers had already fled the scene, disappearing into various parts of the arena complex where they could blend in with crew members and avoid immediate identification, leaving Jacob Fatu lying motionless in a pool of his own blood. Medical personnel reached Fatu within 90 seconds of the attackers fleeing, in what they found horrified even the most experienced emergency responders who have seen countless wrestling injuries over the years. Fatu was conscious but barely responsive, with visible injuries that included deep lacerations across his back, a severely swollen left eye that had already closed completely, and what appeared to be significant damage to his ribs and abdomen. The medical team immediately called for additional support and began treating his injuries while also stabilizing him for transport to a nearby hospital where he could receive comprehensive care. The investigation into who orchestrated the attack began immediately, with WWE officials reviewing every piece of available footage and interviewing dozens of potential witnesses who might have seen something suspicious. The attackers had worn masks and dark clothing, making identification difficult, but certain physical characteristics and movement patterns gave investigators some leads to follow. One attacker displayed a distinctive limp suggesting a previous knee injury, while another had visible tattoos on their forearms that could potentially be matched to known WWE personnel or contracted workers with access to backstage areas. Roman Reigns was informed about the attack on his cousin within minutes, and those present described his reaction as cold fury that radiated throughout the room. The tribal chief immediately summoned the bloodline for an emergency meeting, demanding answers about who would dare target one of his family members and what could be done to identify and punish those responsible. Reigns made it clear that this attack represented not just an assault on Jacob Fatu but an assault on the bloodline itself, and such disrespect could not stand without severe consequences. Jimmy and GUSO arrived at the hospital where Fatu had been taken, and what they saw when they entered his room shook them to their core. Jacob Fatu lay connected to various monitors with bandages covering much of his upper body and visible bruising that extended from his face down to his torso. The brothers stood silently for several moments, processing the reality that someone had done this to their family before G finally spoke, promising that whoever was responsible would pay a price beyond anything they could imagine. Jimmy placed a hand on Fatu's shoulder, offering silent support while also vowing that the Bloodline would hunt down every person involved in this cowardly attack. Paul Heyman conducted his own investigation using his extensive network of contacts throughout WWE and the broader wrestling industry to gather information about potential suspects. His sources revealed that several wrestlers had been overheard in recent weeks expressing frustration with the Bloodline's dominance and discussing hypothetical scenarios about how they might level the playing field. Heyman compiled a list of individuals who had both motive and opportunity to orchestrate such an attack and presented his findings to Roman Reigns, who studied the information with the intensity of a general planning a military campaign. Solo Sikoa took a different approach to finding answers by personally confronting various backstage personnel and wrestlers who might have information about the attack. His imposing presence and direct questioning style yielded several interesting leads, including reports that a group of wrestlers had been meeting secretly in the weeks leading up to the assault. Solo learned that these meetings took place in a storage area of the arena during live events when most attention was focused on what was happening in the ring, making it easy for conspirators to gather without drawing suspicion. The extent of Jacob Fatu's injuries became clearer as doctors completed their examinations, and the news was worse than anyone in the Bloodline had hoped. Fatu suffered 3 cracked ribs that would require at least 6 weeks to heal properly, along with a moderate concussion that meant he would need to pass multiple protocols before being cleared to return to action. The lacerations on his back required over 40 stitches and would leave permanent scars that would serve as reminders of the attack for the rest of his life. His left orbital bone showed signs of fracturing, though doctors believed it would heal without requiring surgical intervention if given adequate time and rest. WWE officials faced a difficult decision about how to handle the attack publicly, because acknowledging it too directly might create legal liability, while ignoring it completely would anger fans who deserved to know why one of their favorite stars suddenly disappeared from television. The compromise solution involved incorporating the attack into ongoing storylines while being deliberately vague about specific details that might complicate ongoing investigations. This approach allowed the Bloodline to seek revenge within the narrative structure of WWE programming, while also giving law enforcement and internal security teams space to continue their work identifying the perpetrators. New security measures were implemented throughout WWE venues in response to the attack, including additional cameras in previously under-monitored areas and increased security personnel assigned to protect high-profile talent. The Bloodline received enhanced protection details, with security escorts accompanying them from their vehicles to locker rooms and back again after shows. These measures addressed immediate concerns but also raised questions about whether WWE had been negligent in its previous security arrangements and whether other attacks might have been prevented with better safeguards in place. Speculation ran rampant throughout the wrestling community about who might have ordered or participated in the attack on Jacob Fatu, with dozens of theories emerging from both fans and industry insiders. Some believed it was revenge from wrestlers who had been dominated by the Bloodline in recent months, while others suggested it might be connected to Fatu's past in other wrestling promotions where he made enemies during his rise to prominence. A third theory proposed that someone within WWE's power structure wanted to weaken the Bloodline as part of a larger plan to shake up the company's hierarchy and create new main event opportunities. The attackers themselves maintained complete silence in the immediate aftermath, providing no clues about their identities or motivations through social media or backstage interactions. This discipline suggested that whoever planned the assault had emphasized operational security and ensured that all participants understood the importance of maintaining their cover. The level of organization and planning indicated that this was not a spontaneous act of violence but rather a calculated strike designed to send a message while also removing Jacob Fatu from WWE programming for an extended period. Jacob Fatu's first statement from his hospital bed came 3 days after the attack through a video message recorded on his phone that was shared across WWE's social media platforms. His face still showed visible bruising and his voice carried a raspy quality from the trauma he had endured, but his message was clear and defiant. Fatu promised that he would recover from his injuries and return stronger than before, and when he did, he would hunt down everyone involved in the attack and make them regret the day they decided to target the Samoan werewolf. His words sent chills through anyone who might have been involved because they knew Fatu's reputation for delivering on his promises. Roman Reigns addressed the attack during a SmackDown promo that became one of the most intense and focused segments of his entire championship reign. The tribal chief stood in the center of the ring with his family surrounding him and declared that the Bloodline does not forgive and does not forget. He challenged anyone with information about the attack to come forward and promised protection for those who cooperated, while also making it clear that those who remained silent would be considered complicit in the assault. Reigns emphasized that the Bloodline's response would be measured not in weeks but in the suffering of everyone who played any role in what happened to Jacob Fatu. Behind the scenes, WWE writers scrambled to adjust storylines that had been built around Jacob Fatu's presence and involvement in upcoming matches and angles. His absence created a significant hole in the Bloodline's plans and required creative solutions that would maintain momentum while also setting up his eventual return. The decision was made to use his recovery as motivation for the Bloodline's actions over the following months, with each victory dedicated to their fallen family member and each defeated opponent representing one step closer to finding those responsible for the attack. Physical evidence collected from the scene of the attack provided some clues but not the definitive answers that investigators hoped to find. Fibers collected from Fatu's clothing suggested that at least one attacker wore a specific type of work jacket commonly used by arena crew members, making it possible that someone with legitimate backstage access was involved. Blood samples taken from the scene included DNA that did not match Jacob Fatu, indicating that his fighting back had drawn blood from at least one attacker, and that sample was run through databases to see if it matched any known individuals within WWE's system. The psychological impact of the attack extended beyond Jacob Fatu himself, affecting everyone within the bloodline who suddenly had to grapple with the reality that they might be vulnerable to similar assaults. Roman Reigns increased security protocols for the entire family and instituted new rules about traveling alone or being isolated backstage without at least one other bloodline member present. These changes reflected a sobering acknowledgement that their dominance had made them targets and that maintaining their position would require constant vigilance against those who wanted to tear them down. Jacob Fatu began his recovery process with characteristic determination, refusing to let the attack define him or limit his future in WWE. Physical therapy sessions started within days of the assault, focusing on maintaining his conditioning while allowing his injuries to heal properly. Fatu worked with trainers to develop modified workout routines that wouldn't stress his damaged ribs but would keep his cardiovascular fitness and flexibility at levels that would allow him to return to action without an extended ramp-up period once doctors cleared him medically. The wrestling world watched closely for any hints about the identities of those responsible, with fans analyzing every segment and backstage interaction for potential clues. Certain wrestlers found themselves under suspicion simply because of timing or circumstantial evidence, even when they had no actual connection to the attack. This atmosphere of suspicion created tension throughout the roster as people wondered who might be secretly involved and whether additional attacks might be coming against other bloodline members or their allies. New details emerged about the planning phase of the attack when an anonymous tip led investigators to discover that someone had been photographing Jacob Fatu's routines and movements for at least 2 weeks prior to the assault. These surveillance photos were found in a locker that had been rented under a fake name and showed Fatu at various times and locations both inside and outside WWE venues. The level of stalking involved elevated concerns about the attack from a one-time incident to something potentially more sinister involving obsessive behavior and long-term planning. The Bloodline's hunt for answers intensified as weeks passed without major breakthroughs in identifying the attackers. Roman Reigns authorized Paul Heyman to offer rewards for information leading to the identification of those responsible, and several tips came in through WWE's anonymous reporting system. Most of these tips led nowhere, but a few provided interesting leads that investigators followed up on, including reports of suspicious vehicles seen near the arena on the night of the attack and witnesses who remembered seeing a group of individuals entering the building through a service entrance shortly before the assault occurred. Jacob Fatu's rehabilitation progressed faster than doctors initially predicted due to his exceptional physical conditioning and mental toughness. By the 4th week after the attack, he was already engaging in light training sessions that included cardio work and bodyweight exercises that didn't put stress on his healing ribs. Fatu documented parts of his recovery journey on social media, showing fans his determination to return while also sending a message to his attackers that they had failed in any attempt to end his career or break his spirit. The attack on Jacob Fatu ultimately changed the dynamics within WWE, creating new storylines and rivalries while also forcing everyone to acknowledge that the world of professional wrestling carries real dangers that extend beyond scripted violence. The Bloodline emerged from the incident more unified and more determined than ever to maintain their dominance while also extracting revenge on those responsible. Jacob Fatu's return to WWE programming would eventually happen, and when it did, the wrestling world would witness the fury of the Samoan werewolf unleashed on anyone foolish enough to stand in his path. Make sure you stay subscribed to our channel, because we will continue following this developing story and bring you every update as new information emerges about the attack on Jacob Fatu and the ongoing investigation to identify those responsible for one of the most shocking incidents in recent WWE history.